At 24, you make a very normal deal with the future. You look at the bank app at the small kitchen table. The number is not a disaster, but it is also not doing push-ups. Rent is paid. Groceries happened. Your work badge is still there, because adulthood apparently comes with accessories. So you tell yourself, honestly, I'll save when I make more. That sentence feels calm. It feels mature. It feels like a plan wearing a button-up shirt. It moves today's pressure into a future paycheck you imagine will have extra space. Then older you walks in. Bigger paycheck, more tired eyes. Same table. Before older you sits down, envelopes slide into the chairs. Rent, insurance, repairs, groceries, family needs. Normal stuff. Not villain stuff. The twist is not that future you fails. The twist is that future you arrives with less empty room than you pictured. So what exactly were you waiting for? Next, the first real paycheck arrives. By 28, the deal starts to look smart. The direct deposit hits, and the number is finally big enough to make your shoulders drop. In the Q1 2026 Bureau of Labor Statistics earnings numbers, full-time wage and salary workers ages 25 to 34 had median usual weekly earnings of $1,140. That is the part your 24-year-old self was counting on. More income arriving later. Not a lottery win, but compared with the early scramble, it feels like the paycheck put on real shoes. So you celebrate small. Takeout. Maybe the pan with the handle that has been trying to resign. But the first bigger paycheck does not walk into an empty room. It lands beside the lease envelope, the car key, groceries, and the quiet wish to feel normal for 5 minutes. Waiting produced more income. It also gave ordinary life time to find seats. The question is not whether the income is bigger. The question is how much of it is still unassigned. Next, the table gets one small envelope before the bills finish introducing themselves. At 30, one boring move sits on the table. A $250 envelope. Or maybe it is an automatic transfer on your phone, which is less cinematic, but much better at ignoring your moods. The rent bill waits nearby, pretending not to stare. You separate the money before the other envelopes start making speeches. It is not proof that you are rich, disciplined, or secretly a spreadsheet wearing shoes. It is a seat reservation for future you. If the money waits until everything else has spoken, it may never get a turn. So the tiny envelope is not competing with some perfect future contribution. It is competing with a future room that may be louder. The amount can be smaller than $250. The rule is that it has to survive the month. What to watch next is the runway. What this same monthly amount can do when it starts early, before older you arrives busy. At 35, the raise curve finally gives you the part you were counting on. In those Q1 2026 numbers, full-time workers ages 35 to 44 had median weekly earnings of $1,384. That is $244 more per week than the 25 to 34 median. This is why waiting felt reasonable. Younger you pictured one bigger direct deposit arriving, sweeping the table clean, and leaving a shiny empty chair labeled savings. And yes, the jump matters. More income can create breathing room. But the table has grown with you. Insurance sits down, a repair receipt scoots in, the grocery bag has apparently been doing strength training. The calendar adds due dates until the paycheck has more jobs than it had at 28. Now the story changes. You made more. The table got bigger. The next question is whether the next jump is as big. At 39, the room is quieter than the promise you made at 24. It is a weekday evening at the same kitchen table, and nothing here looks ridiculous. A medical copay, a car repair note, a family expense folder, the retirement app pushed to the edge like it lost the chair lottery. The raise did arrive, but now each dollar has assignments before you touch it. That is the uncomfortable part. You may not be reckless. You may simply be watching normal life make reasonable claims, one envelope at a time, until the surplus you expected becomes a rumor with nice handwriting. This is where the promise starts to wobble. If you wait until midlife to protect serious money, the next question gets sharper. Then 45 arrives, and the chart does something rude. It stops being exciting. The BLS Q1 2026 median for full-time wage and salary workers ages 45 to 54 was $1,435 a week. That is still above the ages 35 to 44 median, but only by $51 a week, about 3.7%. The earlier step from ages 25 to 34 up to 35 to 44 was plus $244 a week. So the raise curve has not disappeared, it has gone quiet. After that big first jump, you built a private rescue plan around another one. But rent, insurance, repairs, groceries, family needs, and the retirement app did not leave the table just because the next decade showed up. Maybe your own paycheck beats this median, maybe it doesn't. The dangerous assumption is treating later income as empty space before ordinary life gets a vote. Next, you sit at this same table with a catch-up note, trying to make a later paycheck do the work time was supposed to help with. At 48, you sit at the same kitchen table after everyone else has gone quiet. Cold coffee, calculator. A catch-up jar with heroic little handwriting. The note says, "Start now. Be serious." And honestly, that instinct is better than freezing. But the mechanism is rude. A monthly contribution is not just an amount, it is an amount plus time. The $250 you could have protected at 30 and the $250 you try to protect later are the same size in your hand. They do not have the same runway. So the consequence is not that you failed some moral test. It is that the paycheck now has more jobs, and the money you finally protect has fewer years to do its quiet background work. Emergency bill leans in, repair quote clears its throat. Very professional little ambush. That is the opportunity cost, not a lecture, a runway problem. Next, put the two runways side by side and let the calculator stop making facial expressions. At 55, older you finally sits across from you. Same table, different face, more folders. The paycheck lands in the middle, labeled $1,348 a week. The BLS Q1 2026 median for full-time workers ages 55 to 64. The raise curve has stopped acting like a rescue ladder. Ages 45 to 54 were at $1,435. So this later median is $87 a week lower, about 6.1%. Meanwhile, the table has health insurance, a home repair, family support, and a retirement catch-up card politely ruining the mood. Older you did not fail. Older you is busy. Investopedia reported in June 2026 that many Americans ages 55 to 64 lack sufficient retirement savings, which is the pressure sitting in that empty chair. So next, look back at the small money protected earlier and ask what it was doing while life got louder. Now the little $250 envelope gets its receipt. On the kitchen table, you draw two timelines, age 30 to 60 on the left, age 45 to 60 on the right. Same marker, same $250 a month, very different runway. The mechanism is the simple monthly compounding setup used by Investor.gov's calculator. Monthly contribution, length of time, estimated interest rate, and compounding frequency. Imagine $250 a month at 6%. Example math, not a promise. Start at 30 and run it for 30 years, and it grows to about $251,129 with $90,000 contributed. Start at 45 and run it for 15 years, and it grows to about $72,705 with $45,000 contributed. Now, the table gets a receipt, and younger you tries to use it as a ranking system. Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finance's data for 2022 show median net worth around $39,040 for families under 35, $135,300 for ages 35 to 44, $246,700 for ages 45 to 54, and $364,270 for ages 55 to 64 in 2022 dollars. Medians are not destiny. The useful part is the shape. Time leaves tracks through saving, debt paydown, asset ownership, and life stage changes. That is why the comparison sting is the least useful part. The useful part is noticing that time can widen options, while the paycheck can also get crowded by ordinary obligations. Next, stop staring at the ladder and choose what present you can protect before it gets loud. So you clear the table, not because the bills vanished, but because the next paycheck needs one chair that is not instantly claimed. This is not the moment to bully present you with a number that does not fit. If $250 is impossible right now, pretending harder is not a budget. It is theater, and the tickets are expensive. 3 cards go down. First, protect something before the rest of the paycheck starts volunteering for jobs. Second, make it automatic if you can, because future motivation is a flaky employee. Third, when real room appears, raise the amount before lifestyle, bills, or random broken objects hold a committee meeting. The consequence is small but structural. Future you gets one less rescue mission, and later income is not forced to do all the catching up after the table gets crowded. The number is not the point. It has to be survivable enough to keep. Maybe 25, 50, 100, or less. Next, that choice moves to one normal payday. The next payday is not cinematic. No thunder, no choir, just a phone screen, a calendar, and the same stack of bills pretending not to watch. This is where the move gets small on purpose. You choose an amount that can survive a normal month. Maybe $25, maybe $50, maybe $100, maybe the full $250 from the example, if your room allows it. The mechanism is the order. If the transfer waits until the end, it has to wrestle every bill that arrived early and brought snacks. If it goes near the front, it becomes a quiet appointment with older you. Not magic. Just one small chair saved before the table fills again. The right amount is the one that keeps showing up. Next, ask older you the uncomfortable question. So now, the two versions of you are at the same kitchen table. Younger you with the promise, older you with the paycheck, and one protected envelope between them. Nobody here was wrong for hoping income would grow. The risky part was asking the future paycheck to arrive with an empty calendar. The math underneath the story is simple. The raise curve can flatten, and the same monthly amount has more runway when it starts earlier. That is why the envelope matters. It is not impressive because it looks huge. It matters because it gives older you something other than a rescue mission. So ask them now, what future bill are you waiting to outrun, and what small amount could you protect before it gets there? Subscribe to Stick Finance for money stories that help future you keep more choices.